Hi, and welcome to the Outquisitions podcast, where we spotlight industry leaders redefining success. The goal of each episode of the podcast is to uncover their stories, their strategies, and insights to inspire, inform, and really elevate your own journey. So let's dive into today's conversation with yet another super inspiring guest. If you want to listen to a really interesting talk, then stay tuned.
Scott, thank you for coming in. Really pleased to have you on today to kick things off. Can you please present yourself and your company?
Sure. Thanks, Killian. I appreciate you having us on the podcast. Um, my name is Scott Roy, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Whitten Roy Partnership. We're a management consultancy that focuses on sales and sales management. Also, we go into leadership and customer service. This is our 16th year in business. We've conducted about 550 projects all around the world over the last 16 years. They're quite detailed. They're transformational projects, not just simply a sales training, but we actually help companies change from the way they're currently doing business into a far more productive level of performance. And we've done this in about 52 or 53 countries around the world. So that's who I am. I come from a sales background. I built a couple of companies, retired a couple of times, got bored, came out, and now I've been doing this for the last 16 years.
Beautiful. So who do you actually help? I mean, it seems like you can help many people, many organizations, in many parts of the world. So yeah, who do you actually help?
Anyone who has a sales problem, and not online sales or highly transactional sales like like beer and cigarettes and things like that. I mean, we're also ethical about about what we help companies sell, but typically it's a product or a service that is sold either in a B2C environment or a B2B environment. We work in both areas. But the fundamental problem is the people who own the company think, you know what, we can be doing a lot better than what we're doing, and for some reason we can't figure it out. We need outside help to help us do that.
Right.
That's who we help.
Right. So how do you actually help them without going into all
Yeah.
the secret sauces and so on?
Well, I don't mind sharing it. I mean, we basically we follow a very traditional consulting process. Is first we need to understand the problem that the person's trying to solve. I mean, one of the very first things that happens, people say, "Well, how much do you cost?" And I go, "I have no idea how much we cost until I understand what the problem is," because it's just our time,
Yeah.
And some problems are fairly simple to solve. Some problems are really complex. I mean, it's like, for example, one of our clients down in South Africa, an organization called Health Force. It's very small. They're changing the face of healthcare and access to healthcare down in South Africa. And I know the CEO personally because I've worked with him before. He had a head of sales who wasn't performing at the level that they needed to, and so he said, "Could I get some sales coaching for such and such?" And we said, "Sure." So we put a sales coach in there, one of our very experienced B2B guys, and within literally 2 months, they had closed 3 very large deals, and he had taught and trained her how to move deals down the pipeline. That's a huge problem for organizations, is they oftentimes don't have a front of funnel problem. They have a problem once they're in the funnel and in the pipeline. Things go very slowly. You say, and so
Right.
what's happened there? And it's very common, the problems about why they get stuck in the pipeline. So we help them unplug their pipeline. In the process, that head of sales learned how to sell differently in order to create the urgency that moves deals along. So that's an example. But the first thing we have to do is we have to understand what the problem is. So that's discovery. And then once we understand that, then we design a solution from our toolkit. And sometimes we have to think outside of our toolkit to do that.
Yeah.
And then we create a program of change that's either delivered through coaching or training. And then that introduces the change. But the most important part that comes next is the 3 to 4 month period of time, or 5 months, again, depending on the complexity of it, where we install the solution, coach the people involved so that the solution sticks, and it's actually productive, and now it's changed over to now the new way of doing business, and then we withdraw. You say once we've made it work.
Right. Okay. So what would you say are the conditions to make sure we are doing business the right way? What would you say are the some key parameters that one business, let's say in the B2B world, would
Yep.
need to respect to make sure that a deal is successful and both parties are happy?
Sure. Well, with the consultative method, this is the problem. Most organizations think they're selling consultatively, but actually they're not. Okay.
Mm.
Our property is called DQ selling, which stands for decision intelligence. It's like IQ or EQ, right? DQ stands for decision intelligence. And what we believe is that good selling always follows four key steps. One is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Okay. In other words, every customer, you can think of it as an issue, you can think of it as an opportunity, but typically there's a problem, there's a business problem that your client is trying to solve that your product will actually help solve. So first of all is defining the problem really, really well and having good, deep conversation about that. Secondly, defining what is the cost of the problem if it doesn't get solved. Not the cost of the solution that you're offering, but what is the cost of the problem if we don't change anything, keep doing what we're doing, what are we missing out on? Or, what is it actually physically costing us in real terms, in dollars and cents, because we have equipment that keeps breaking down, for example, we have to repair it, whatever, rather than just replace it. Then once we really have a real good business case, in other words, is this a problem worth solving because the problem is big enough and it's costly enough that you want to do something about it? Then at that point, the third step comes in, which is what people traditionally think of as selling, which is, let me tell you about the product or service that that'll fix the problem, you see. So most salespeople more or less skate through the first two steps, problem, cost of problem, oftentimes just tell the customer what it is, right? And then they get to the pitch and they spend most of their time on the pitch and then answering objections, and then what's the value of the solution down here, you see. So they usually spend too little time on the problem, cost of problem, and then that means they got to spend a lot of time explaining how the product actually is going to solve the problem, and then they
Mm.
run into all kinds of objections because they didn't do the upfront work. So what we say is slow down on the front end of the sale, slow down, do it over several meetings, in some cases, sometimes months, it could be that too. And then if you'll do that, then the back end, when you come with a solution, you can speed up. It's going to go very, very quickly because your solution fits a well-defined problem. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Yeah, yeah. So would you say there is some kind of fear or limiting belief that prevents those sales professionals asking all those questions, or what
It's
is it?
This is a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. It leads directly into a model that we use with every client. It's called the race model. Okay,
Mm.
R equals A plus C plus E. And what it stands for is that sales results that you're currently generating come from three factors. This is what we believe. One is the mindset of the salesperson, the attitude. That's what the A stands for. Okay, results equal A, attitude, confidence, belief, uh, the beliefs I have about the person I'm selling to or people I sell to, the beliefs I have about my product, etc. Secondly, the C is competence, and that's the skill of selling or the skill of management for that matter. Okay. Does the person really know how to conduct a consultative conversation? Do they know how to get the other person to speak? Do they know how to listen well? Do they know the nuts and bolts, the blocking and tackling, as they say, of sales conversation and how to conduct that? Okay. And then the E is execution. And that is, am I doing the right thing at the right time with the right people? Because if any one of those is wrong, you can see that you're not going to get the result that you want to get. So when we go in to diagnose a client, we think through the lenses of A, C, and E, and we look at the results and we see A, C, and E, and we diagnose that in a client. And then once that's diagnosed, we know exactly what we need to do. In other words, to get a different result, then something has to happen with the A, C, and E because that creates the input, the result, you say.
Right.
So to change it, to permanently change it, then we have to address attitude, competence, and execution. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Would you say most of the gap nowadays in the Western world, in the US, for example, is within the first part, so the A part?
Absolutely, I think it is. And it's attitude that is also reactive attitude that is generated oftentimes because of the way targets are introduced, the
Mhm.
expectations of the salesperson, the productivity of the salesperson. How those things are introduced is really important, and oftentimes it's very clumsy. I've seen it many, many times where managers will introduce targets and just boom, a person's attitude just tanks because of the way it was introduced, you see.
Mhm.
So the key to great leadership and management is getting people to do things that you need them to do in order to succeed, right? But the way you get them to do that is by getting them to want to do the things that you need them to do. Not obligate them to it, not force them to do it, not threaten them to do it, but how do I work with this salesperson in such a way that he's getting up in the morning and he's excited about going to work because he wants to do what he needs to do to succeed. Do you know
Right.
that you can actually manage people into thinking in that way? You can actually teach people about how their mind works and what gets in their way and how they do things that get in their own way or how management gets in the way of people's motivations unwittingly. They don't mean to. They just don't know any better. And
Mhm.
fortunately, my business partner, Roy Whitten, who's now retired, he's enjoying his retirement in California. He's worked very hard all his life, but he's a brilliant man. He's a PhD in transformative learning and change. He doesn't have a sales background. He has a people background. He understands how people think and attitude, and he developed these amazing models around attitude and helping people shift attitude. And I hired him into my company back when I was 30 years old. That's almost 40 years ago now. Okay. And I was able to transform performance in an insurance company where we used to have 200 to 300% turnover each year in our sales force and cut that back to less than 50%. And productivity went through the roof, you say. And that was because he taught me how to be even a better manager than I was before because he taught me the tools of how to help people shift attitude.
Okay, and this is something that you teach, of course,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
I'd say every client is pretty shocked with the simplicity and yet the importance of addressing this.
Right.
It's something that people focus on. You need people to sell more. Okay, teach them how to sell more. Okay, so we focus on competence and we focus on execution, but we don't touch attitude. So,
Right.
so what we do is we spend time teaching people something they know very little about, and then
Yeah.
also teaching competence execution as well.
Everything. Okay. So anyone listening, let's say, wanting to increase their attitude level
Yeah.
for greater sales performances, what would be some key first steps in conduct to have a better attitude?
Yeah, great question. Great question. First thing I do in the morning, uh, well, at least once a week, but probably every morning also, is I would pull out a piece of paper or, in these, and I say paper very specifically because I think whenever you're doing work with about attitude, I
Mhm.
think there's something about holding a pen and using a piece of paper, that tactile feel, as opposed
Right.
to doing it on a computer screen in Word. But I would actually use it, like a diary, like I do, right? And I also use Word and do all the the technical tools online as well. But for this kind of work, I I I like to sit down. What is my goal for today, or what is
Mhm.
my goal for the week? And I'll put down two or three goals or objectives, and then I ask myself a very simple question: Why? Why do I want to do that? Okay. So usually it comes out as, oh, well, because I want to hit my target. Okay. Great. I want to hit my target because, and that's the frame. I want to, whatever it is, because. Okay. So I want to hit my target because what would be your answer to that if you were the salesperson? I want to hit my
Well,
because.
yeah, because I mean, maybe it's I'm a little bit too far ahead, but because I want more freedom in my life and provide to for the people I love, let's say.
Right. So you want more freedom and to provide for the people you care about, you love. And you
Yeah.
want to be able to do that because.
Hmm. Because I guess I would be aligned with, let's say, my life purpose better, more.
Yeah. And what would be a glimpse of what that purpose is? My purpose is in life is to do what?
Well, part
For
of my
people.
purpose in life would be, let's say, to be able to provide and be there for the people I care about
Yeah.
and be
That's
useful, let's say.
important to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So based on that, what are you going to do today? What are the top three activities you're going to do today? Or who are the top clients you're going to call today? What exactly are you going to do with them? You say,
Right.
so
Right.
now what happens is the action is inspired. You see, it's inspired from within. Who cares who gave me the damn target? Who
Yeah.
cares that my manager, kind of came in and put the target on the desk like that, it's my target. I own that target now. And the way I'm going to go after it is by personalize it, bring it inside of me into what I want. You see, it's not what I don't want, it's what I want. See? Now, the second thing is that if I find myself feeling scared or angry or any sort of emotion that is what we would call unproductive, in our language that we use, it's called below the line. Above the line is
Hmm.
where you want to be, but below the line is where you don't want to be. And so
Right.
if you're ever below the line, feeling angry, anxious, unkind, unloving, you name it, any sort of what we call separating emotions, then the very first thing you want, if you don't sell very well when you're in a space like that, right? Right? Because you don't connect with people very well when you're having disconnecting thoughts, right? So
Right.
my first job as a salesperson is to get my attitude above the line, and the way I do that is by first of all becoming aware of the fact that my attitude is below the line, you know, and then choosing to do something about it. So
Right.
we have a way of doing it. Here's a shortcut. You can do this beginning with just breath. Okay. Let's say I become aware that I'm feeling tense or anxious. Then what I can do is say, oh, okay, well, let me just take some conscious breath. So what I'll do is just I'll breathe in and just breathe in slowly, like 4 count, and then I'll breathe out through my mouth with a 4 count. Okay, like tick, 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 tick. So slowly breathe in, slowly breathe out. And just that breathing, what we call conscious breath, causes me to get centered and quiet on the inside. It helps my mind to quiet down, you see. And then I
Beautiful.
ask myself what I want. As soon as I find myself calming down, then I ask myself what I want. Okay. And go through that same process as before.
Yeah. It's crazy to me how it seems like it appears that great outcome in sales is is so correlated to your leadership skills actually, right?
Absolutely.
It's yeah, it's all in the mindset. It's yeah, like the skills, it seems like you can learn them fast, but then how do you manage those up and downs?
Mm.
This is where, yeah, I mean, genius is required, or maybe not, or maybe it's quite simple, but it takes wise. I mean, myself, I have some experience in sales, and managing those up and downs, this is the trickiest part. When you act from abundance, everything seems to go well. But when you are
Mm.
scared and you have a little bit of stressed out,
Mm.
then it's the rabbit hole. Crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we teach a more detailed method of how to actually get unhooked from our mind that's going down the rabbit hole. As you say, that's a really great uh, word picture that you use. But I had a guy one time. We wrote a book. We've written 3 books, but
Right.
our book, Decision Intelligence Selling, this guy contacted me after we wrote it in 2020, I guess. No, 20 yeah 2020. Um, he contacted me. He says, "Man, I'm so glad you wrote a book because my workbook from the training you did with us 8 years ago is so ratty. And I said, you still have the book?
Yeah.
This is a guy who worked for British Telecom, and he worked in the large complex deal area. Okay, he was one of the four guys who in global services sold really big deals. And he said, he said after that training, I applied everything about sales that you taught, the complex sale. But what really helped was attitude, because it helped me close two $1 billion plus deals. $1 billion. Can you imagine that? You know, and I've never closed $1 billion deal. I've closed big deals, but not $1 billion deal.
Right.
But he says when you're in that arena, it's so hotly competitive, and you've got so many stakeholders to manage, and your attitude can bounce all over the place. And he said, for me to be able to manage my attitude, manage my confidence, manage my worries in real time in front of the client, that made all the difference in the world. And of course, he has a whole team behind him, of deal, a deal team. And he says managing their confidence and making sure they're on track. That was a really key thing. So,
Mm.
I mean, it's really exciting to see former clients of ours apply this stuff in real time and see how they actually succeed with it. It's amazing.
Right, right. So more on the marketing now. How do you attract new partners or new customers?
That's a great question, actually. We do great work. That's how we do it. Okay.
Right,
I mean, if you do great work, people find out about you. I mean, I've had so many people on LinkedIn, they've been reaching out, trying to get me to do a lead campaign and all that. I mean, there's somebody in my inbox every single day. We can get you 20 hot leads. We don't do it that way. We do it organically, and now people call us, and we've been doing this 16 years, right? Um, Now I don't want to downplay the importance of having front of funnel activity, because Roy and I were in a very different place. It was just the two of us when we started the company 16 years ago. We both came out of retirement. We both had our finances handled. Okay, we didn't need to make money quickly. Okay. And in fact, we didn't need to make money at all, which is then you can build your company like you want to build it, right? So,
right,
so we, little by little, we began finding out that people wanted more of our time, and so we needed to build a team around us to do that. But we were able to use our current clients to get referrals and to find other clients through those referrals and grow slowly, grow organically. But now, I mean, occasionally we'll speak at conferences. Um, we'll get known that way. We'll get known on podcasts like this, or people will read the book and understand, who we are, and then they'll contact us like that. But we don't
right,
do anything more than that. Oh,
right.
we'll write articles. I mean, we write articles for various publications as well. So.
And do you have a podcast yourself as well, or have you thought about building one?
Uh, we've thought about it. I've recorded a few podcast type things for specific purposes, like the launch of our second book. We did a podcast around that. The book is called Sell Well, Do Good,
Right,
and it's a book that's geared toward um, companies that are trying to alleviate poverty in the global South, or the developing world, as it's referred to. So it's specifically written for that area of the world. And so we launched a podcast. I think it was seven. Yeah, it was seven pieces to that. And
mhm,
we did but it was just designed to be a short, specific purpose for that.
right. Beautiful. So we touch to the end now. Anyone listening who loved what you've said, your insights and your energy, and wants to get in touch with you or your company, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you. Well, you can write directly to me. We're a small company, only have 45 employees. So you can write to Scott at wrpartnership.com. That's Scott with two T's. Okay. And you can go to our website, wrpartnership.com, and there are testimonial videos on there. There's all kinds of information on there about who we are and what we do. And we've got our two books, two major books. The other book is a smaller book that was written for COVID. But Sell Well, do good is that one, and decision intelligence selling is that one. So and they're both available on Amazon. This is more B2C. This one's more B2B. So
Your choice.
you make your choice. Yeah, it's the same. It's just a different it's the same approach, just a different context when you sell in B2B versus B2C, as you know.
Yeah, definitely. Scott, thank you. Thank you for the time. It was really interesting. And
Thank you.
yeah, looking forward to posting this.
Great.